So this is book club. Yes,
New book, new us.
yes, the one thing. So we are through page, was it
24.
24, somewhere around there.
25 is blank.
Yeah,
Oh, okay,
chapters.
that's
Yeah.
I didn't read that one.
Well, I added that one just to give myself.
I can't wait.
So we're just through the first like 3 chapters there. And at the very beginning of the book, he references City Slickers and the one thing. So we're just gonna watch a little clip and then we can discuss further. Yes.
And the second it's over, he's gonna get back to his patient and find a way to return. You do it? You're right ahead. Be. Black residents. You've been married. You've been in love. Once. I was driving a herd across the Panhandle, Texas.
Alice is
Asked me this little dirt farm I got some about. Out in the fields, it's
She can't get it.
working down the dirt. Just as she stood up and stretched her back. She was wearing a little
5425.
Second son was right behind her. Showing she the doubt to give her. What happened? I just turned around and rode away. Why? I figured it wasn't going to get any better now. Yeah, but you could have been, with her. Been with her lots of women. Yeah, but she could have been the love of your life. She is. That's great. That's not great. No, that's wrong, Curlin. You passed up something that might have been terrific. My choice. I never did nothing. It's your choice. Cowboy leads a different kind of life. And we're cowboys. We're a dying breed. Still means something to me, though. A couple of days. Just heard across the river. Riding through the valley. There's nothing like it. See, now that's great. Your life makes sense to you. What's so funny? You worry about a lot of shit. Shit. She doesn't want me. She read it. Just say, how old are you? 38. 39. Yeah. You're not here about the same age, same problems. Spend about 50 weeks a year getting knots in your rope, and then you think 2 weeks up here will have time for you. Yeah. You know what the secret of life is? No. What? This. Your finger? One thing. Just one thing. You stick to that and everything else don't mean shit. That's great, but that's the one thing. That's what you've got to figure out.
That's it, guys. That's the whole thing.
Yeah.
all right.
All right.
Class over.
Yeah, exactly.
Class is over.
All right, next book.
Too funny.
All righty. So it was mostly introductory, these first couple chapters, kind of getting established, how the one thing can be viewed through, different lenses of like people who have been incredibly successful and how they, were able to reach that success, both in the one thing that they're passionate about and also in, there's normally like one person who really is like their cheerleader and supporter. And so I guess the real kind of bit of it out of the introduction was, you know, how success is sequential and, you know, the importance of narrowing your concentration and focus. That way, you don't, you know, spread yourself too thin, worrying about all of the little things, and then getting burnt out because of them, and instead, you know, prioritizing, you know, what is going to help you reach your goal effectively.
So I will say something that really resonated with me was the dominoes example.
Yeah.
And how he was just talking about how, you know, one little domino can knock over a domino that's, you know, like twice as, not twice as big, but like 50% bigger. And so, you know, it's that kind of snowball effect that I think can really affect our lives and is what results in those big changes that we're making and the big decisions that we make. So I think a lot of us get caught up on, you know, the big things that we need to get done. Like, okay, you know, we need to buy a house, but we don't think about the smaller things that go into it and thinking small and thinking, you know, what's one thing that can change that? Maybe it's, you know, going and getting pre-qualified. And I'm speaking to that from experience because, again, I'm going through this process now. And so you can sort of see just how those small things really do create a domino effect. So what does the statement going small mean to you guys?
To me, because y'all are looking at me.
It's fine.
To me, actually, like something stuck out crystal clear to me. Like I'm all about, like in the past, I was all about, it's a positive thing to be a multitasker. And in truth, it's not, it's the lie. That's the lie. For me right now, going small was like not getting wrapped up in the minutia of how to get that one thing done. It's just like focusing in. I mean, it's hard, I think, because, you know, just buying a house, like you said, it's a multitude of different things, but like I personally right now am having success in my health journey. And that's because like my one thing was I'm unsuccessful when I don't pre-prep and have my food ready for the day with me. Otherwise I'm going through a drive-through or just like whatever. And so it's like pack that lunch, have it ready every morning. I mean, of course I gotta shop and I gotta do this, but in the end, the lunchbox is packed. And so to me, I just had to get small with the big umbrella. Does that make sense?
Right. It's almost like you're going to these small things with the same intentionality as you would with a big thing.
Right.
Which I think is really like the point that he was trying to get across. At least that was sort of my interpretation of it.
Yes. What do you think, Mike, in terms of getting small? Like, what does going small mean to you?
Focus.
Just getting focused.
Just getting focused. And, you know, I've got lots of shiny objects all around me. I've got 3 little businesses. And, you know, it's easy for me to get distracted. And I'm also, as most agents are, people pleasers. Who's got a problem? What problem can I solve for you? What's the problem?
Yeah.
So just trying to stay focused, trying to stay on task, not getting distracted, not listening to other people's problems that are not my problems. And having a small business, and seeing things and going, you know, why is this happening? You know, come on, it's not that freaking complicated. The world with 5 brains.
Well, like you make a good point in that we get pulled in so many directions all day long. If you like, that's why time blocking, I think, is obviously going to be a conversation in this. It's like, of course you have 5 emails and 3 texts and all that stuff to respond to. But if you just say, okay, my one thing between 1 and 2 is to respond to emails and texts, you are doing the multitude of things, but you're blocking them into like whatever. Does that make sense?
So then you're not getting distracted.
Yeah, you just know, you just say, okay, I see you, but I'm gonna get back to you if you want to. That's the thing in your head. That makes sense. Yeah, we lost that, which is not fun.
Jayla, what does going small mean to you?
The perfect example, this week, I was kind of assessing my workload and I'm like, maybe I need an assistant or maybe I need all these things, to offset that. But I was able to meet with Jen and she was like, or maybe you need to just buckle down on the systems that you have and figure those out first, what you are actually doing, and then think about bringing someone in or adding something to the plate. So going small for me this week has definitely been, okay, instead of worrying about the big things, all of the deals I have, focus on my systems and start there so I can do my deals confidently because my systems are in order. That's starting small for me.
That's awesome.
I love that.
I think that even actually ties back into our last book with Shift and how they in the book, I forget which tactic it is, but basically making sure that your foundation is solid before you add to it. And it doesn't have to be reinventing the wheel, but just making sure that, the basics of getting through, like, for example, like with real estate, like getting through the transaction, like make sure that the compliance is correct, make sure that, like disclosures are sorted, everything else that kind of goes into that, and making sure that your bare bone basics are solid, and then building on that and inviting people into your team. And so then that way you are not teaching bad practices, which then could ultimately lead to a loss potentially, because like as it's in the Shift book that, like when times are good, like sloppiness or extra costs are masked by like, oh, well, I'm making all this money. But then, just focusing on that one thing in this case, like making sure that your basics are there, I think is what leads to the most success.
Yeah.
And so I guess also with this, like Jayla, of course, talked about, like going back to her basics, but for you, Mike or Jennifer, do you have you noticed success building on previous accomplishments, like in your own business or personal life before?
Yes. Yes. I mean, like, that's a great example. Like Jayla saying that, like as an individual agent, I was telling her, and we both love this one presenter. His name is Gene Rivers, and he's an amazing Keller Williams leader and owner of a team and Mark Center, blah, blah, blah. But he in a class that I took at Family Reunion, and I was so excited. I wanted to hire an admin, blah, blah, blah. And he said, if you're doing under 30 transactions a year and your head's on fire, you need better systems, not an admin. And I was like, because I really wanted that validation that hiring an admin was what I needed to do. And so I turned around and my one thing for like 3 days was like, what systems can I put in place that's going to make the management of emails and paperwork and all those things easier? And to me, narrowing down that focus is like right now, what I'm loving about this job is being able to share that stuff that I shared for free, or not for free, but in PC coaching. But now as a team leader, I can spread it wider, And so to me, being able to facilitate that with other people is like that ripple effect. That kind of answers that question.
And I think you touched on something a little bit, and that's, spreading yourself too thin. When you have too many focuses and like your head's all over the place, you're spreading yourself thin, whether you know it or not. And so the thinner you spread yourself, the less you have to give. And so I think something that has been a theme in the first 3 chapters for sure has been, give all of that energy to one small thing, and then that'll give you the momentum to keep moving on to those larger things. If you keep your focus and, not spread yourself too thin with things that maybe aren't as important or are distractions or, things like that. So I think we've all felt that we've been spread too thin at some point, especially, as an agent, I'm sure you have 100 things going on at once, but, can you give any examples of like when you felt that you were spread too thin because you're not focused or?
Today, like, Yeah.
I was gonna say,
he's laughing. I know.
The
Yeah.
other part of this is, not just right to him, but on Monday, my brother was in Randsburg. He sold his business to his employees now a year and a half ago, et cetera. And he's constantly, well, why don't you come out and see me? Why don't we go for a bike ride? Why don't you do this? Why don't you do that? Don't tell me you're busy, because you can't be busy. You're not supposed to be busy. So I basically said, okay, on Monday after I did a couple of things that I felt that I had to do, just so I could have a clear mind. Took off and, I had a customer, wine customer come in. Can you put some wine for me? And I sent her an email, because she is just now retired. She got forcibly retired from the job in December. And initially her reaction was, bullshit, you can't fire me, and basically the company got bought out. And now when I talked to her, she's like, you know what? I'm slowly figuring out, slowing down. She said, I encourage you to figure out how to and stay focused.
We're works in progress.
I'm working
Every
in
day.
progress.
Yeah.
It's a challenge. It's a challenge.
Yeah.
It's, because I have a little bit of the Joe, I can't just do one thing. I'm not good at delegating. I'm not good at delegating. I'm not good at being, I'm not a manager. I've told people for years, if you want to hire the worst manager that you can find, hire me. as a manager. I'm not a manager. I walk in and say, well, what do you mean you don't see what needs to be done? Is that stupid? Come on. I mean, why is this taking this long? Should have been done half an hour ago.
Just wanting to control everything.
Right, so,
Yeah.
I'm trying to learn that to not everything's a fire.
Right.
Well,
I-
don't, oh, sorry.
Oh, and I think it's a lot easier to say yes to things than it is to say no. I think we want that satisfaction of being like, oh, I did all of these things and oh, I helped all of these people. But if you're really focused on the one thing, you're helping yourself and putting yourself in a better spot in order to be able to help others.
Don't you guys find that, like, I'm a list maker, I'm sure we're all here in the room in that category, but like, you'll have a list in the morning and you're like, oh my God, these are hot things. These things have to get done today. But then something comes up and it jumps ahead of others, whatever. And then you realize you made it through the day. And a couple of those things really weren't as critical as you thought. They could wait for tomorrow. And so, yeah, I'm like, I've read this book before and I'm excited about the process of relearning that there is just one thing in that day that would make other things like not necessary or can be moved or whatever, but just constantly prioritizing that, because we do have jobs that are fires come out of nowhere.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think, like, to that degree as well is, how he says in the book, like, what's the one thing that you can do that makes everything else easier? And then, like, tying it into the time blocking, and, there have been tons of studies done that, like, in the morning, people are the most productive.
Yeah.
And in making sure that that is your one hot item, and that make sure that you time block that, and make sure that when you are focusing on that task, that you don't have notifications going, so you don't, you don't get like a random text message from, like some random interested seller who's like, oh, like, I'm thinking about it, and then you're like, oh, business, that's a lead, like,
Yeah.
jump on it right now. Actually, in one of the quantum leap classes that I took, they discussed how, you know, everyone thinks, like as you said before, that everyone thinks that, you know, they're a great multitasker. They can get a lot done in a day because they're able to try like a bunch of different things at once. But in the reality of it, when you like break it out like time-wise, it's like if you focus on your one thing with no distractions and you get that done in your time block of like let's say an hour, like you've been 100% focused for that 1 hour. But if you're like, okay, I'm gonna do this one thing, but then like other distractions start coming in, when you squirrel away, like you don't actually have the capacity to then reorient yourself to
Yes.
that task as quickly as you think you do.
And I think a good example that they gave of that in the book was the chasing two rabbits. Yeah.
Yep.
And so if you're focused on all of these different things, you're gonna be pulled in different directions. And so you're not gonna be able to effectively do either one.
Yeah.
You know, no matter how hard you're trying or how fast you're running, it's still gonna get away from you.
Well, it's eating like that elephant in the room or whatever, first thing in the morning, like get that out of the way because that's a huge heavy load. Whatever that one thing is for that day, getting it out of the way to me just makes it feel so like when you're procrastinating it or you don't want to do it or whatever, it just looms. It's a psychological like anvil that you're dragging behind you.
And I think also getting that out of the way gives you, again, the momentum to really keep things rolling. And then that way, even if you got nothing else done, you can say, well, I did my one thing.
Yeah.
And I got that done. And now I'm closer to my goal because of that.
When I was at Beyond, or, you know, training as a TC last summer, every morning at our stand-up, we went around the whole Zoom call and everybody had to say, what is their one thing for the day? What is their top 20%, like the other stuff, ancillary stuff, and then one thing they were grateful for. And it was really kind of amazing because by the end of like maybe a week, I really learned a lot about everybody, all right up. Even there were 15 of us in the call. And it would go really quickly because you didn't dig into any details. You just said one thing, 20%, and what you're grateful for. And it was really kind of amazing. And then we were held accountable to that. So the next day somebody would be like, hey, did you get that thing done? You know, it was good.
Awesome.
I think that even ties into, you know, like having, you know, that person that you can turn to, like, you know, like Bill Gates, like with his partner, and then they get helped by the guy who, you know, was like, hey, you know, this is your one chance. And, you know, being held accountable for, your top priority, because as I'm not good at holding myself accountable because I'm like, okay, like this weekend I'm gonna do laundry, and then it's the weekend and I'm like, but I could do literally anything else and that would give me more joy.
Yes.
And then it's just being like, well, you know, the person who's holding me accountable is myself, and
Yes.
obviously I'm a bit of a slacker, so it'll be fine if I just do it later, and then I run out of like sauce, and I'm like, these are the consequences of my own actions.
Yeah.
And so, like having that outside source of support, and like your cheerleader, your mentor, or trainer, I think is just really important.
Do you have that one person in your life that is able to hold you accountable?
Yes, my partner bullies me, so.
Awesome.
Yeah, well, it's more to be like, hey, did you do that thing? And I'll be like, no. And he just looks at me and I'm like, but I'm gonna do it right now.
Yeah.
And like, just to make sure that I like stay on track for like, you know, the things.
Oh,
Well, like, that's a good question because like, would Bill Gates have asked that guy with the computers to help, you know, keep him on track for like a health goal? Those are different people.
Right.
And I found like me personally, and this is just whatever, is like when I'm paying for a coach or a trainer or somebody, I'm showing up because that's my money that's on the line. I know that for me, I've learned that that's my motivator. Like if it's just me, I'm going to slack, I'm going to slack. So yeah, I think that it's important to realize that there's not just one thing, like your one thing today could be health or it could be this or whatever. Like you have compartments in your life. And I think it's important to realize that you need, like, there's certain support people that I want for business that I wouldn't want anywhere near my nutrition or my health,
Right.
you know?
Exactly.
So, yeah, for sure.
I think also, there was a point in the book where he said, Jesus only needed 12, you need 14.
That's right.
And I was like,
Yeah,
That's
Man,
true.
that's great
That was a
though.
good point.
Yeah.
I like that a lot. That's so true.
so I thought that was really cool, that you can kind of split things up with the people that you're around and allow them to hold you accountable to those things.
In
Um,
the different aspects of your life.
100%.
Right.
Yeah.
Like my husband, total enabler when it comes to like getting stuff done. He's like, you don't have to. But then like my best friend will call me and be like, did you do that thing? And I'm like, not yet. And then that hurts, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? So
Yeah.
it's a lot of like putting your eggs in different baskets, I think. But in a way that's strategic almost.
Right.
Yeah.
Because you're again allowing them to hold you accountable to your one thing in that aspect of your life.
Yeah.
We're almost out of time here.
Yes.
We want
This is
to
good.
kind of share ahas real quick.
That was my aha. So it's not just one person. Like you
Right.
know, everybody doesn't bring a skill set that's completely across the board, you know, in all things. And I think that's why, and it's, I don't know, maybe to me, because I'm a mature, older side, it's just, it's harder, I think, to make friends and whatever. And so I've been really strategic about that the last 10 years. It's really finding people here at Pittsburgh that are that thing in that one realm of my life. If that makes sense.
it's tough in this,
It's hard.
because there's so much, yes, I opened the door for Ally, property in Lawrenceville yesterday, I chatted with the buyer, and I said, oh, where are you from? Penn Hills. You know, go very far? No. No, I mean, we're going from Penn Hills to Lawrenceville.
Yeah.
Oh, wait a minute, it's up the shady side too, because that's a real far. You know, but that's so typical of Pittsburgh that, you know, percentage of people that I've met here that are from here originally, maybe left, but have come back. You know, it's just amazing. Other than living in a small southern town, I've never seen that like that before. You know, the number of people, and those people know people, you know, those relationships were formed at high school and elementary. It's amazing. It's amazing.
I have to scoot. I'm sorry, y'all. This was awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for organizing us.
I'm gonna share my aha really quick. And
Yes.
that's just that something I think that I need to do. Maybe one of my one things is going to be identifying those people in my life that are able to hold me accountable.
Yep.
And you know what I mean? And just,
Be strategic and tell them, I need you to
Right.
do that for me.
yeah, and just making them your circle.
Yes,
I know that's true.
that's a good homework. Like
No one
name,
is self-made.
yes.
That's my aha. That
Is
was
what?
it. No one is
No one.
self-made.
No,
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Awesome.
thank you.
Yeah, thank you for joining us. We'll see everybody next week.
Yes, I will again post the outline that I have for the 8 weeks, so then everyone can use it.
And we'll be doing chapters 4, 5, and 6 next week.
Yep. All right. Thank
All right.
y'all.
See you then.